We're going to work on imperatives today, which is a certain kind of verb form. The textbook identifies the imperative as being a part of the imperfect aspect. And the way that it is formed will confirm that, and the way that it functions certainly confirms that as well. The imperative is the grammatical term for command. So the imperative verb form is the command verb form. And as such, as a command form, it is inherently dialogical. So what that suggests is that in order to utter a command, you have to be communicating with someone directly. And so all imperative forms are inherently, just by virtue of the fact that it requires direct communication, all imperative forms are always in the second person. So if you're going to parse an imperative, every imperative will be in the second person. So the nice thing about that is that there are only then 4 options for imperative forms. It can either be masculine singular, masculine plural, feminine singular, or feminine plural. Those are the only 4 options for the imperative. And the way that an imperative is formed helps us understand how to distinguish between those 4 options. So, for instance, here, this is our masculine singular, feminine singular, masculine plural, and feminine plural here. Okay, so this is the root resh, dalet, pei, to pursue, or to run after, pursue. And so the way that an imperative is formed, an imperative is formed is you take the second person imperfect form, the second person prefix form, which the masculine singular in the pa'al is tir dof. Tir dof. Tir dof. Now, I'll say now also that as a verb, imperatives are vocalized through verb stems. Like every verb, every single verb form is vocalized through a unique pattern created by the stem that communicates the stem. And so as a prefix form, or as a modified prefix imperfect form, the imperatives follow the vocal pattern of the imperfect, or of the prefix form, because it's a second person prefix form. So the way that it's formed is you take your second person masculine singular prefix form here, imperfect, tir dof, and you remove the pronoun. You remove the prefix. And so that is your imperative form. Redof. Redof. If you're going to tell a single guy to pursue someone or pursue something, redof. Redof shalom. Pursue shalom. Okay, and it's the same for all of the forms. Tir de fi. Tir de fi becomes read fi. Read fi. Now, the hierarchy here is the result of the Shiva rules. You may recall that you can't begin a word with 2 Shivas. if you have two shavas right next to each other at the beginning of a word, of course you can have two shavas in the middle of a word. Oops, I'm sorry. I didn't spell this one right. Tirdifi. This has two shavas right next to each other, and that's fine because the first closes the syllable and the second one is an open, is a vocalized shava. But here at the beginning of a word, you can't start with two shavas. So the first shava becomes a hirik, and the second one is, in this case, vocalized. Ridfi. Here we have tir de fou, and the imperative is read fou. And the feminine plural, tir dofna. Tir dofna. So, re dof. Redofna. Redof, ridfi, ridfu, redofna. These are all in the pa'al. Now, there's an interesting connection here that I want to draw your attention to. That the masculine singular and the feminine plural follow the same basic pattern. You can see it. The shava with the holum, the shava with the holum. And the feminine singular and masculine plural forms are the same. Hirik, shava, hirik, shava. So, redof, masculine singular, redofna, feminine plural. Ridfi, feminine singular, ridfu, masculine plural. Now, the way that you then differentiate between masculine singular, masculine plural, and feminine plural is by the ending, the prefix complement. Okay? So over here, masculine singular, you have the prefix, you remove the prefix for the imperative form, and you're left with no ending, right? No, the masculine singular is the only form of these four that does not have a prefix complement. But all of these do, and so these become your imperative endings that then differentiate for you, tell you the gender and the number, whether masculine or feminine, singular or plural. And of course, they're all second person, okay? So hopefully that clears some things up for you. What I find particularly helpful is the patterns here. Masculine, singular, feminine, plural, feminine, singular, masculine, plural. Really, you're only memorizing two patterns, two vocal patterns. And both of them are actually the imperfect vocal patterns, which you already know for the prefix forms, or you're already becoming familiar with them. So the imperatives are pretty simple, basic thing once you understand how they're formed. Now, interestingly, in our Hebrew class, you encountered a lot of imperative forms when you were here for the intensive. And that's because language learning, when languages are being learned just by babies who are growing up in a culture, growing up in a home, more specifically, the languages are the most basic form, or one of the first verb forms that someone learns as a baby is the imperative form, because the parent is always telling the child to come here, Johnny, Bo, or go over there, or pick up the ball, or walk up the stairs, or don't do that, right? There's all kinds of imperative forms that permeate the life of a baby. And so that's why it's I think, a very simple form, verb form. That there's very little added. It's just this sort of basic root with a basic vocal pattern, and then these four options of endings that differentiate them between gender and number.